So spring is here, golf season is upon us, and maybe your golf clubs, they've been sitting in the closet, they've been sitting in the garage. You pull them out, and maybe you're just not that excited by them. You don't maybe have plans of buying new clubs this season, but your current clubs, they may have some rust on them. The shafts may look a little worn, any number of things. So what we're going to talk about today are a few different ways to just sort of reinvigorate your golf clubs and get them ready for this golf season. So let's go. Hi everyone, welcome to the Mobile Club Maker. I'm AJ. I hope you're having a wonderful day today. So we are going to talk about a few different ways to sort of get your golf clubs ready for the golf season and hopefully get you maybe a little more excited about using them again. We're going to cover a couple sort of performance-based things that you can be doing, and then we're going to also cover a few more just basically cosmetic things that you can do to the clubs, get them looking a little better. So I've got this Cleveland wedge that we're going to be using today for all these little adjustments and all these little cosmetic changes we're going to be making. And as you can see, this club is pretty darn old. I mean, there is rust all over the face. The shaft is all sort of pitted and stained. The shaft band on it is close to completely gone. The ferrule is scratched up and kind of cloudy. So just not a very exciting golf club to look at, and not something that would really probably get you very excited about taking it out on the golf course. So this is what we're going to use to sort of see if we can't invigorate it a little bit, get it looking a little better, get it a little more exciting, and hopefully have that translate to some excitement about using it. Okay, so the first thing that you want to look at are your grips. Now, if your grips are slippery, if your grips are shiny, if they're sort of cracking or peeling or anything like that, those are indications that those grips should be changed. And there's probably no easier way to make a golf club feel a whole lot better than to put some new grips on it. So I would always recommend checking your grips at the beginning of the season, see if they feel dried out, see if they feel, sort of crispy or flaky or just slippery, and then decide, is it something mild that you could maybe wash them or take a little sandpaper, rough them up, and then wash them off and get some new life into them? Or do you need to just go ahead, cut those grips off, and put new grips on? Definitely that should be the first thing you look at. Second thing I would look at with any golf club, at least with when we're talking about irons, wedges, that sort of thing, is definitely going and checking your lofts and lies. Either bringing them somewhere to have them measured. If you've got the equipment at home, you can do it. If you just want to check your lie angles, you can use the Sharpie, the straight vertical line test that we've talked about on the channel before. Basically, just check and see if your club heads have bent at all. Now, certain golf clubs are obviously going to be more prone to bending than others. Forged clubs will often bend more than a cast club. If you've got cast clubs, most cases you probably are not going to have to bend or adjust them very much or very often because they just don't go out of spec that much. If you've got a softer forged head or just a soft metal that's being used, then it may make sense to go, at the very least, go do that vertical line check, and then from there decide, maybe take them somewhere, have them check the lofts, have them check the lies, and get them dialed back into spec. Because over time, obviously, those things can get bent out of whack, and if they are, it can lead to gapping issues, it can lead to launch issues as far as missing left and right. So definitely something to look at and take care of before your season begins. Okay, so the first thing we're going to look at as far as the more cosmetic issues is the head. Now this head has definitely got a fair amount of rust on it, and it's very simple to remove the rust. All you need is some medium grit sandpaper, some medium, maybe some fine grit sandpaper, and you can remove that rust and get that head looking shiny again. Okay, so when you're trying to remove rust from the face or anywhere on the head, very simply, you're just going to take some sandpaper and just start working it back and forth across the face. And what you'll see is very quickly, we've already started to remove a good amount of that rust. So let's see if we can get a little more off there. Now, I'm by no means a professional golf club restorer. I mean, that was just taking some basic medium grit sandpaper, and then I went back with a little finer grit sandpaper to try and clean it up a little bit. And this club is very old, so it's not going to be perfect. There's no way to really fix these grooves. They are pretty worn down. But as you can see, we removed a good amount of that rust right from it, just basically with that very simple sandpaper method. Now, you want to remember, if you do this, this club will rust again. So if you take this club and you go play it in wet conditions and then you leave it and you don't dry it off, the rust will come back. Now, that was going to happen regardless because the original finish is gone, but just something to be aware of. If you do take the time to clean it up and remove the rust and you want that rust to stay gone, you're going to want to make sure you go and wipe your clubs down at the end of every round and keep them dry, because otherwise that rust will present itself again. Next thing let's look at is the shaft. Now, again, this shaft has got some little pits in it. It's definitely got some little rust spots and some sort of stains in the steel. Just not all that exciting. The shaft band is completely sort of worn away. You can't read it. It's only a little bit still there on the end here. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to basically just sort of create a brushed nickel, brushed steel finish on the shaft, just to give it something a little bit new, give it something a little different, and I think it's going to look a whole lot better than how this currently looks. So let me show you how we do that. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and just remove this old shaft band, just using a heat gun. You could use a torch, whatever you want to use, but there's no good reason to keep it on there, so we're just going to remove it. If you wanted to get a new one, you can find replacement shaft bands. If this was actually a shaft where the graphics are painted on or something like that, then it's probably better to just remove it all together, because there's no real way to redo those graphics. All right, next we're just going to use basically sort of like a Scotch-Brite pad, just a very gently abrasive pad like this. And we're just going to start running this up and down the shaft and working our way around it. And what I like to do is I'll go sort of up and down this direction a little bit, and then I'll go and sort of go in a circular pattern. Okay, so as you can see, after a few minutes, what we've done is basically just taken the shaft from a chrome finish shaft to just more of a brushed finish. And I think, honestly, compared to what it looked like before with the pits and with the little bits of rust on it, I think this is a much nicer, cleaner look to it. Also removing that little shaft band. Obviously, if you have a belt sander, you could definitely use it for this. If you have the right sort of belt that just gentle abrasive kind of belt, you could definitely use that, make this a little bit faster. But this was just a few minutes work, and we got it looking, I think, a whole lot better, a whole lot more consistent, especially if you have, something like a Project X loading zone shaft, or maybe some of the Nippon Modus shafts that have the graphics are actually painted and printed directly on the shaft, and that stuff definitely starts to wear off, starts to come off after a couple seasons and can look kind of junky. So I don't think it's ever a bad idea, if you are in that situation, to just remove it all, and either just you can either just remove the paint and keep it as chrome, or if the shafts are showing some of that pitting, showing some of that rust, just go ahead and just sort of gently sand them to get this sort of finish to them. Also, you won't have any glare with this, so that's an added benefit. So if you don't like the glare from your steel shafts, this can help with that. Last thing we want to look at is the ferrule. Now this ferrule, and really all ferrules after a few years, are going to get dinged up. It's just a piece of plastic. It's going to get dented. It's going to get nicked. It's going to get cloudy looking. And it's really very simple to bring it back and have it look basically brand new. So I'm going to show you real quick how we do that. It's essentially the same process you'd be using when you turn down ferrules when you're assembling golf clubs, just sort of skipping to the very end of it. Now, as you can see on here, this ferrule definitely has some little cuts, some little grooves that have been sort of indented into it. So in this case, I would say what we want to do is start off with a little bit of sandpaper, a little light sanding to try and get this all evened up. If you're only dealing with just sort of a cloudy look or just very, very, very light surface scratches, you can skip the sanding step and just move on to the next one. But we're going to go ahead and see if we can't just okay, so that's better. It's not perfect. Let's see if that was enough. So the next thing we're going to do is just get a little acetone on a towel, paper towel, ideally something that doesn't have any real texture to it, just a very plain paper towel. And we're just going to brush the ferrule just very gently. I like to wear a glove for this so I don't have to touch the acetone. And we're just going to brush it very gently. And bring that shine back. Okay, so we can still see some of these grooves here. So I'm going to go ahead, we're going to go back. Run it one more time with a medium grit sandpaper first. See if we can remove those little notches. Go from there. Okay, now we're going to go with the finer grit sandpaper again, smooth it out. Okay, let's see. Let's wipe this off quick. Okay, I think we got all the big indentations out of it. Let's see, we'll go ahead, go back to the acetone. Now let's go back and see if we can shine it up real quick. Again, just very gentle. I think this club looks a lot better now than it did before. Is it perfect? No. This was a pretty extreme example. I mean, this club is 20 years old and it had the rust and the pitting to prove it. But, you know, if you can do this with this club, if you have a newer club that isn't quite to that state, you can probably get it looking a whole lot better. That's essentially all we wanted to do today. Basically, just sort of remove rust, remove any sort of big glaring imperfections that would draw your eye to it, clean up the ferrules because they always get smashed up and can look pretty rough. And, you know, in many cases, the ferrule can be what makes a otherwise good-looking set of golf clubs look not so good. You know, the ferrule is going to be one of those things that it can get damaged so easily. You can have a set of clubs that are otherwise in great shape, but that ferrule can look a mess. So if you can go back, basically just touch it up a little bit, clean it up and get the ferrule shiny and looking new again, it can make the whole golf club look a whole lot better. If you enjoyed the video, please go down below, give it a thumbs up, and if you have not already, please consider subscribing to the channel and hit that little bell icon so you can be alerted when I release new videos. If you've got questions or comments, please leave them down below. I read and answer all of those. I am on Instagram. You can find me at Mobile Clubmaker. Until next time, go out. Hopefully you've got some good weather coming. Go play some golf, and we will see you next time. Bye.